The title of this message is Be Careful Who You Listen To. And the verse that we're looking at as our text is where Jesus addressed the sheep and told them that they need to listen to his voice. His sheep follow him. And of course, Jesus wasn't talking about little fluffy creatures that live on hillsides in Wales. He was talking about people. I read recently in the newspaper, in the Telegraph, a really interesting piece that was based on Facebook, and I'm going to read a few paragraphs from that now. And it was the headline that caught my attention. Facebook conducted secret psychology experiment on users' emotions. Facebook has conducted a secret, massive psychology experiment on its users to find out how they respond to positive and negative messages without telling participants. Over 600,000 Facebook users have taken part in a psychological experiment organised by the social media company without their knowledge. Facebook altered the tone of the user's newsfeed to highlight either positive or negative posts from their friends, which were then seen on their newsfeed. They then monitored the user's response to see whether their friends' attitude had an impact on their own. The results show emotional contagion, wrote a team of Facebook scientists in a paper published in a journal in the USA. When positive expressions were reduced, people produced fewer positive posts and more negative ones. When negative expressions were reduced, the opposite pattern occurred. These results indicate that emotions expressed by others on Facebook influence their own emotions, or our own emotions, constituting experimental evidence for massive scale contagion via social networks. And the piece then goes on to talk about the issues of privacy and all that sort of stuff. But that's not what I'm concerning myself with in this message. It's that fact, which is quite simple and well laid out, that when Facebook controlled your newsfeed to fill it with positive posts from other people, your attitude also became positive. You responded to the positivity around you by posting positive stuff yourself. But likewise, when your newsfeed was drip-fed with negative stuff, you also posted posts, made posts that had a negative attitude behind them. And that's really important. And that's something that, back to the scripture, Jesus says we must follow his voice. We must allow ourselves to be led by that which is positive as opposed to that which is detrimental to us. Now, there are folks I know that I'm careful how I ask them certain questions. For example, there are folks that I don't like to ask them, how are you? Because 2-3 minutes later, you've had this massive list of ailments and woes and cares and worries that you can actually start to feel like that yourself. Not that I'm saying I don't have compassion for the person or anything like that, but what I am saying is I'm careful what I allow into my life. So there are some folks that I steer clear of certain subjects and topics because I don't want to allow that negativity into my life, because negativity breeds negativity just as much as positivity breeds positive stuff. And we need to be careful what we allow into our lives. Now, if you're a user of Facebook, you will know that even if you are friends with someone, you grant a friend request, and I will always do that, but you can then not have that person's posts appearing in your newsfeed. And for a long time now, since Facebook first introduced that facility, I've been very careful as to what posts I allow into my newsfeed. Those people that, and we all have our own criteria, those people that are just constantly whinging and moaning and grumbling, swearing and all that sort of stuff, I edit them out of my newsfeed. I'm still their friends, and I can still dip into their Facebook page and talk to them and all that sort of stuff, but I've been very careful not to allow that into my own space. And Twitter recently, I also use Twitter. Twitter recently brought out a facility whereby you don't have to unfriend someone, because that can create issues and people wonder why they've been unfriended and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to unfriend them, but you can mute them so that their posts no longer appear in your timeline. And I'm not saying I do that just because one person has a rant or one person has a little lapse of morality in terms of what they're posting. I'm talking about over a regular period of time. I don't want to bring negative stuff into my life. I can handle it, because in the world that we live today, you've only got to watch the news to realise that there's lots of negative stuff out there. But there's a difference between reading the news, watching the news, reading, watching, observing what other people are doing. There's a difference between that and actually opening the door, so to speak, and then allowing that stuff to come into your heart and reside there. That's where it starts to take root and create the problems. So we have to be very guarded, and I have been for a long period of time, because that thing by Facebook, that project that they undertook, the results of that aren't news to me. I know that that's what happens if you're an observer of people, or if you're interested in psychology and interested in human behaviour. You know just how powerful other people's posts, comments, observations, etc. can be upon your own life. So you have to be very, very guarded. And that's why in life we have to be careful who we listen to. Even on regards people, obviously Jesus said, my sheep know my voice, etc. But in terms of just people, you have to be careful. There are times when most of us probably need some advice on something. What I would say is, choose the person carefully that you ask the advice from. If you don't, the advice you get will not be wise. It won't be advice based on that person's life and wisdom that they've worked through themselves. A good tip really is to see where someone's coming from. If you're talking about a person that isn't together themselves, then it's a good indication that the advice they give you is not going to be godly or wise. Even if you're not a Christian, you still want wise advice. But if that person, his life or her life, appears to be well together, they handle issues quite well, they handle controversy quite well, then there's a good indicator that that person may be someone who you can turn to when you need some advice in your life. So it's important, I believe, to be careful that we don't open up the door to negativity. The moment we allow negative stuff to come in, it will be like a seed. It might be small and insignificant at first, but it will take root in our lives. It will start to take over. It will start to grow. And before we know it, it will pull us down, and we too will become negative. But the other side of the coin is, if we allow positive stuff to come in, that too is like a seed. It will take root. It will grow. But it will fill our lives with good stuff. It will fill our lives with positivity. Be careful who you listen to.